Okay. Now the I'm showing you a dashboard right now that's really just a workflow of what goes on when you process payroll. This demo, and I'm doing air quotes, is more like a training because it's payroll, and there's just not um, it just doesn't get that sexy. But the process when we go through a pay run would be like what you see over here, where we start off with a batch. We create the individual pay documents, process those through each of the areas like batches, or the payment batches, EFT files, etc., where we end up with our checks. And then the last two pieces would be creating some liabilities and doing any other government reporting that we need to cover from there. And so this is what the payroll workspace looks like. Similar to what you've seen in the rest of Acumatica, where you have transactions profiles on one side, preferences on the other. When it comes to the demonstration, that's where I spend my time to start with, is the preferences, just like if we were doing a brand new implementation. Then we use that information that we set up here in the preferences to go over and do our transactions, with the middle ground being setting that information up for the employees. But I do like to start off with over here in the preferences, talking about work locations and tax maintenance. Work locations is literally what it sounds like. It's places where you might actually work. So when you key in your time, you would choose the location that's been created in the system, and those can be assigned to the employees as their defaults. After setting up those locations, then we have our tax maintenance, which is just where we're keeping track of our tax tables. You don't have to do anything really special to do this. You don't have to be a tax expert. All you have to do is click the button to say update taxes. And Eric, whenever those updates might occur, you'll just be reminded to go and click that button, and Acumatica just goes out, updates the tables. You don't have to know how to do it yourself. We just take care of that for you. If you need to make any specific changes, you could, and you can see here the different territories, provinces that are listed there. So that takes care of some high level maintenance there on the taxes. Getting into the specifics, that's where we set up our earning types, the deductions, benefits. Uh, Earning types, my main earning type code that you're going to find in your installation of Acumatica today would be this RG code, regular hours. We do give you a variety of different types of categories there: the wages, overtime, piecemeal, amount based. And then based on the tax engine, you'll see down here below that it's letting us know um, which tax codes are going to be related. If you do need to set up specific codes for specific projects, then you could also do that as well. Otherwise, you can reuse that code for just about everything across the system. Also note right here, if you are taking advantage of Acumatica's PTO module with payroll, then you can accrue time off. If we do track something like overtime, notice the earning category is overtime, and there's the multiplier based off of that RG code. So yeah, you set up the different types of earnings, and then we also have benefits and deductions. Note here we have the employee deduction and an employer contribution. So we have both tabs depending on the contribution type. So if you only have one, then you would only see the one. If you have both or the other, then you see the other. Or if you have both, that's when you see both tabs. And with each of its fixed percent, gross net amount per hour, and all the other parameters that are necessary down below. And if I pull up my health insurance, may or may not be a good example there, but what I do like to show off on this is when I talked earlier about being able to send the information from your deduction and benefits, you can have a related vendor. And then when you send that information to accounts payable, it's asking, well, what type of information do you want to have sent over to accounts payable? Like in this example, it's code and code name, but you might also free text something or just use the code, payment date, etc. And there's the reporting boxes down below. Right here, also you can mark these as garnishments. And you can have an unlimited number of garnishments too. By the way, I do like an interactive session, so if you have any questions, please feel free at any time. All of these codes do have the ability to create your specific GL account posting for these codes if necessary, but you can also do it on the group level. That's why this is blank, is because we are doing it as based on the paid group that you'll see a little bit later. Overtime rules, if you do want Acumatica to automatically calculate overtime, then you would set up a code something like, let's just call this one Sunday 8. And we're going to say this just defaulted some values in. We've got a double time code that came in. It said daily on Sundays, anything over 8 hours. So we would automatically split the time that came in through our time and expense module. Say anything over the 8 hours. I use the DT. You could do something also like weekly 40. Same idea, just on a weekly basis. Anytime you exceed 40 hours, then we're going to use the OT time. I'm just going to save those. I don't know why it's disappearing there. Then we also have employee classes. You can think of the class as just like the rest of Acumatica. It's a default delivery tool for the people that are added to the class. And so I have a weekly candidate here, which means that once we assign people to this class, they would become an hourly employee, be included in the weekly pay group, 52 weeks, and be a member of the Toronto work group. And there's my workers' comp code too. Pay groups. You saw just a moment ago when I was in the class that we assigned people that was part of the weekly class, that they were also included as part of a pay group. So you can have an unlimited number of pay groups. This is what I meant by my GL posting coming from that group instead of the individual types or employees or anything like that. So meaning that anybody that's posted to this construction weekly, they would use these accounts, the weekly, and it just turns out, probably from being lazy, that we just use the same GL accounts for all of those groups. But you could have them map according to your specific needs. Executives to one group, other salaried people to another set of GL accounts, weekly people to a third set of GL accounts. This is also how I'm going to pay people later on when you see me add people to the batch. These are really going to be the batches that I start with. Workers' comp codes. We do have a large number of these, I think, here in this demo environment. No, I lied. We have one. In my other payroll systems, I have like 28. But there's your rate. And you can, again, apply those to specific projects or labor items if necessary. And then the last thing to talk about for setup would be the payroll calendar. So when we created each of those pay groups, you saw the naming of those was a little bit intuitive, that like monthly, I need to set up a calendar to say, what does it mean to be monthly? This is, think of this as the template from year to year that would be used to create the calendar for the next year. And same thing with each of these weeklies, that they could have a slightly different iteration, like these get paid on Thursday, the week starts on Sunday, and then when we get paid. So you set up these parameters. Those are what gets used over here in my pay periods, so that when I do create the pay periods from one year to the next or period to the next, like 2024 here, if I create, then it's going to create what that means for the number of periods that I have in that pay group. Kind of the same thing as the financial year in the finance module. All right. So that took care of preferences. There's my pay periods. Last thing on setup would be the PTO banks. If we are accruing PTO, that is, we can assign these banks to individual employees with the default accrual rate. If we do have it set up as percentage, that is, what's the dispersing pay code, and then do we allow carryover, front loading, and what do we do when we're settling up? So with all of that being said, now we can apply all of those preferences, the PTO bank, to the individual employees. And that's what this employee payroll settings screen is. And I just want to point out that This employee payroll screen is different from the employee screen that you may already use elsewhere in Acumatica, and you can find that one under configuration employees. So this employee record would be the one that gets used throughout Acumatica for things like who is a project manager or approval processes and well, just again, everything that's not payroll. So you can grant people access to this employee screen and not allow them to have access to the payroll employee screen. So it's two different screens, but they are related to each other. When you go back and click this button, it'll pull up that other employee screen. But with all that being said, this is the employee record. Here's the class they were assigned to. They inherited all the properties from that class. A little bit of personalization here. And then there's the work locations where they may or may not work. Tax settings, this is where you get specific with their the tax maintenance screen we saw previously. If you needed to do any changes or updates, you could do that between these two screens. Compensation, this person is paid $75 an hour. If they were salaried instead, you'd see the yearly rate. We apply the individual deductions and benefits, or just stick with the class values, individualize it down here in the fields below. PTO banks, we do, this one does have vacation. She's at a 6% accrual. He, I don't know what I'm saying. And then on the payment, that's the EFT, where we just said 100% is going to that one. But if you did need to have more than one, hit the plus just to add the rows accordingly. And that's what it takes to do the setup. I like to think of this from an implementation standpoint, that this is like an 80-20 rule, where 80% of your efforts put into setting it up to initially, 20% ongoing, just maintenance and making adjustments as you go forward. All right, so thinking back to the dashboard we were on from the workflow perspective, so what you're going to see happen now is we're going to create the batch and then process the documents all the way to here, and then we'll finish it off. And so that's where we are right here with the payroll batch. This is what you would do week to week, is create a brand new batch. So define the type. So you've got the regular or special. Regular is going to be that using the calendar. Special would be the one-offs. Maybe it's a bonus check run or something like that. Take your pay group. Define which period. I'll just go with something random here. And now I can add all the employees I want to from that group. You don't have to if you don't want to. And then you also have options up here on the top to pre-populate with employee defaults. Think of this as the salaried 40 hours, 80 hours, 86.67. Or you could also pull in time activities if you were using the time and expense module. I'm just going to pre-populate just so you see what it looks like if data was coming over. You also have other options besides using the time and expense module or the, what did I do wrong? Please, let's see if I can add Pierre. This demo data could probably use some work. All right, I just added them without hours because I can still add the hours. I don't know what's wrong with my system on that. But over here on my earnings tab, you can see it's all blank. But if I do have a spreadsheet with values, then I could load values from a spreadsheet. And I've got one over here on my other monitor, or at least here's an example of what that might look like, where I've got the employee, the dates, the hours that they worked. If we were doing this with related to projects, then we can add that. And then here's the labor item. It's pretty minimal on this upload that I could use. What employee number was that anyway? We're just going to see if that works.
And is this upload then coming from exact time?
It could, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you get it out of exact time, and all you have to do is match the columns. And so those are the columns directly from that spreadsheet.
With this payroll module, does a timekeeping module come with it, or are we still keeping that separate?
That's up to you.
Oh, okay.
So here's the time and expense module is built into Acumatica. So you've got time activities, employee time cards.
Great.
So if you
Yeah.
do take advantage of that time card module, then that's the part where back over here when I added employees and I said take time activities, so it could pull in.
Got it.
So we demoed the Acumatica mobile app for timekeeping, and it was decided that wasn't adequate for your needs, which is why we brought in Exact Time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I brought in some extra data here I don't need, so I'm just going to dump that stuff out. That was just really just to show you that you can pull it from external solutions sources. So I'm just going to leave that as is. Plus, after it arrives, somebody comes running down the hallway and says, "Hey, no, we forgot to include some stuff." Francois is giving me a problem here. Oh, dates. That might be my problem. Just see if that gets past that. So you wouldn't have to do this if you had your data correct. I just didn't have it correct in my upload. But it's also proof, though, that after I did the upload, if I still needed to make adjustments afterwards, I could. And I can still make those changes on the individual transaction too. This is kind of like staging it before we get to the payroll check. This is still just in the batch. All right, let's save that, see how that works. Yeah, I need to work on my upload because it left the rate off too. Come on. But that's also kind of proof that you can upload just about everything. So if you are taking advantage of an external solution that did more, you can handle it. All right, so I've got some data in the system. Take this off of hold, and when I release this, you're going to see the paycheck show up here. So this is the area where we're just staging the check. We're making the link to the time data, whether it was the upload the basic 40 hours, 80 hours, 86.7, or loading from an Excel spreadsheet. We created these 4 checks, which leads over to this paychecks and adjustment screen. And when I come over here, this is where you're going to see the full history of all the pay runs we've done. Those 4 checks we just generated are in a pending calculation stage. I see why up here was a problem is I didn't finish off a payment previously. So I'm gonna focus on Francois. But I could, while they're sitting in that pending calculation mode, I can still continue to process them in mass by coming over to my processes screen and going to this process payroll documents, where I can do the calculation, I can do a recalc, I can process payments. So I don't have to do them one at a time. It's just, I like to show you what it looks like for that one check to do it one at a time here. So where was Francois? 550. So this is what their check looks like. There's the lines that we brought in through the batch process or the spreadsheet load. If we go to the deductions tab, nothing's been calculated. Same thing with taxes. You can even see that up here in the header portion of the document. Now, if I go and do the calculate, this will be the part that creates does the math for the deductions and the taxes. If I was using the overtime rules and I'd worked more than 8 hours, it would split the lines accordingly. That employee must not have deductions turned on, but we do have taxes. So after the calculate process is finished, if we needed to, if we make some changes, I could recalculate again, or I can just add it to the payment batch, process that batch, and I have a suspicion I'm going to get a message here too. Oh, we're good to go. Oh, and then I can export that EDT file Oh, there's the error message I was going to get. And if I need to go and look at just what a payment batch looks like from the past that was successful. Oh, something wrong with that batch number. But that would be the end result, is what we end up with the file that we can upload to the bank. Now for the individual pay stubs, this is an example of what it would look like when I print that to the screen. Totally modifiable. Just open this up in edit mode. There's my earnings, benefits, deduction, taxes, PTO banks, and the EFT information down here. And once we create that EFT file, upload it to the bank, finish that off, then we'd that would, if you think back to the way the payroll flow screen is, we're at the point where we finished off the paycheck. Now we can move on to some bigger picture items like printing reports, government reporting, liabilities, etc. And for the liabilities, that's back over here again under the workspace, create liability bills. So what happened as we were generating those transactions, it was dumping that information over here into this screen. So whatever liabilities we need to pay, check the boxes, process. This would send it over to the AP module for E Blue Cross in this example, where we can now generate a check and send it off. For government reporting, we have prepare tax forms. And there's my T4. Let's just go with 2023. And you can see what it looks like right here. And then we also have your record of employment. And I believe another big concern would be the final check on your paycheck screen. So I showed you how to do a regular check, but there's also special checks, adjustments, voids, and final. All right. That's the payroll module.